it's time for me to issue a formal apology to BioWare, because for the longest time, I had the nerve to blame them, to blame the studio behind the Veilguard for the game being a total mess. I figured that the company who actually created it, were developing it, that they should be held accountable. They should be criticized. They are the ones to blame. But it turns out I was totally wrong, apparently. I was completely misguided. I was pointed fingers at the wrong people. I should have done more research. I should have really gotten to the bottom of things, because no, it turns out that it's actually everyone else, everything else, that is to blame, and not BioWare. So, couldn't have got it more wrong, apparently, and I'm finding this out now. I'm learning, I'm being educated thanks to this article that says Dragon Age fans are apologizing to the writers after the Veilguard backlash. So, BioWare release a turd. Some people waste their money thinking, I used to like Dragon Age, I'll give this another shot. What? I've wasted my $60, $70. It's a total Disney-fied mess that is nothing like the originals at all. In fact, it's like a reskinned live service game that's been turned into a single-player game. What is this? Those people, they're not getting an apology from BioWare. They should apologize to BioWare themselves. It's BioWare who are the victims here. They're the ones who deserve an apology, apparently. So it's interesting angle to go with at this stage. And the person who wrote this article, so Rhiannon, has her pronouns in the bio. A lot of stuff that you would expect, but also this. So I'm seeing a new argument that they're going with here, because the game release, and I think they were really trying hard with the whole narrative of, oh, it's just those chuds, those outrage culture morons who are going to criticize the game, but there's a lot of fans who are loving it quietly. They're playing the game and enjoying it. They really wanted to go with that argument, but that fell flat because you can't actually find anyone who likes it, because it disappointed old fans, disappointed new fans. There was no one the game was really for, so they had to ditch that argument pretty quickly. They're now going with this. You might have heard Jason Schreier, investigative games journalist apparently, where every investigation he does ends up the same, where you get a mess of a game, whether it's Anthem or the Veilguard, or I don't know, did he do one on Saints Row, that reboot? He probably did. But he investigates and always comes to the same conclusion, which is the workers, the blue pink-haired Karens working on the game who've destroyed the studio culture and there's no chance we'll ever get anything decent anymore, they're actually geniuses. Don't hold anything negative towards them. They're geniuses who wanted to make the best game possible, but a handful of suits, shadowy suits in a room who you don't know who they are, you don't know their names, any details, they destroyed the game and stopped us from getting a great thing. But those Karens, the blue hairs, pink hairs, they wanted to make the best game possible. So that is the new argument now for the Veilguard, where everyone's admitting it's crap, but it's not BioWare, it was other outside factors that ruined the game. You can see this shill saying, sad, angry, frustrated, and annoyed that Dragon Age was dicked around like this and set up to fail after all these years. They wanted to make a good game, but they were set up to fail. They didn't fail. Someone else did it. Those meddling kids. Genuinely so heartbroken for the Dragon Age devs, several of whom had been there since Origins. Their ideas were pushed aside in favour of money, and they were never allowed to make the game they wanted. They were treated horribly, again, set up to fail, and then they were fucking fired. It was everyone else who was to blame. It wasn't them. It's not like that the studio culture itself had got to a point where there was no chance that anything possibly good could come out of it. Doesn't matter whether managers meddled or not. It's not the studio that was to blame. No, it was everyone else. All of them, they wanted to release something good, but it was just out of their hands. That's the new argument. And that feeds into this article about how the fans are apparently apologizing to BioWare. And we can see here, the Veilguard launch must have been a turbulent time for BioWare. Reviews were great across the board. There was nothing dodgy there. It's not like there was an effort from the mainstream games media to try and polish a turd for political reasons, because the devs behind Veilguard, they're all on the same team. So let's shill for this game, try and pull the wool over the eyes of players. They really tried, but in the modern age, that just doesn't work anymore. The game has to be somewhat competent, and BioWare couldn't deliver, so that whole scam just failed. As Dragon Age the Veilguard proved to be much more stable than any recent game from the studio. Bravo! It was more stable than Anthem and Andromeda, two games that were a level of mess where I think that they, destroyed the reputation of BioWare forever in Anthem. Like, the game, it wasn't just that it was bad or that it was like a live service cash grab. It was the story behind the game and just knowing that those devs spent 6 or 7 years doing almost nothing. They tried to trick people at an E3 and pretend that the game existed when it didn't. They showed like a 3D movie and pretended it was gameplay. So hearing that story, that killed BioWare, I think, for a lot of people, even though that was like their first big miss. And then there was Andromeda, where no one remembers the actual game. They remember the facial animation. So BioWare, still innovators, one of the first games in the modern era. Probably Oblivion was the very first, but this was really the first in like the YouTube era where everyone started talking about it and laughing at it all at once. The facial animations in Andromeda sort of kickstarted that. So everyone came together, laughed at the game, didn't buy it. It probably killed the Mass Effect series somewhat. It went from a pretty respected series to maybe don't do any more because you're destroying that legacy. That's what it kind of felt like. So the idea that they're going, oh, well, the Veilguard was better than those two, so this is incredible. It's one of the most stable releases in recent times. A whole lot of fun to play. Very high bar there. However, when it got into the hands of longtime fans, they were quick to notice that the game's tone was very different from previous entries, getting rid of the bite that many of us loved. That's not even to get into the comments that went beyond any actual critique of the game, as some, oh my god, they attacked the Veilguard for having LGBTQ plus characters, something it has had from the first game and only expanded upon in its sequels. And they like to do this, they like to kill all nuance in the discussion. So it's like, oh well, the first Dragon Age Origins had like a bisexual character, which means if you criticize it, you don't know what you're talking about, because every Dragon Age game was woke, therefore you can't criticize a non-binary character in the recent one doing push-ups because you misgendered someone, because there's a bisexual in the first game. If you're criticizing it, clearly you have other motives. That's the sort of argument they go through. So no nuance is allowed when criticizing these things, apparently. Put simply, it must have sucked to work on the game. I'm sure it did. As there were many who took their criticism way too far, resulting in some higher-ups leaving social media. Oh my god, people are so critical that someone had to leave social media. I've got to rethink what I'm doing. I need to be nicer in the future. Nowadays, after an explosive report from Bloomberg claimed that EA was the cause of the Veilguard's development woes, some fans have changed their tune. So, explosive report, that again is Jason Schreier, supposed investigator, but again, every one of these investigations, it feels just agenda-driven. It always seems to have the same conclusion, like he's working backwards, he's very political on Twitter. He's the guy who, he saw a picture of like 8 game devs at an indie studio, and they happened to be white. It was like a European studio or something, so kind of makes sense, but He saw that and said something like, oh, this is the worst thing I've ever seen in the game industry. This is evil or something like that. So he's himself totally off the deep end. But then these investigations that he does, it's always the same thing, where apparently the developers, even though that they'd already screwed things up with Anthem and they destroyed the Mass Effect series to some extent, other things like that, he just tries to push this narrative that the Dragon Age Veilguard developers wanted to make the best game possible, but it was all out of their hands. It was obviously the EA suits who are ruining it. There was the Mass Effect team came in and ruined it somehow. There were dramas in the team, which we'll get to in a second. Even the voice actors' strike was apparently to blame. Those pesky voice actors, they ruined Veilguard for everyone. It was going to be the best game ever. They were going to rewrite all the dialogue and make it good, but they couldn't because of the strike, and we ended up with, I guess, their old drafts. I mean, they still wrote what was in the game, so the excuse that literally is in the Jason Schreier article that they couldn't fix it, apparently, because of that. Again, a zillion excuses, zero accountability, no putting up the hand to say we could have done better. It was, oh no, all these things outside of our control. We don't believe in the saying that when something stinks, it smells like shit, smell your own shoe. No. It's all these other factors, apparently. So, fans have changed their tune. They're apologizing now because they've realized they've gotten the whole Veilguard situation wrong. Reddit user DJ Reyes kicked things off, apologizing to some of those who worked on the Veilguard, and many fans agree and echo similar sentiments. Well, if we do our own investigation, this entire article about fans apologizing to BioWare, it all amounts to a single Reddit post on the Dragon Age subreddit, which was already a shilling place for discussion where any criticism is generally banned. And if you even just try to criticize the tone of the game, for instance, that makes you phobic of something. You've got to be scared of something if you're daring to criticize the tone. It can't be genuine criticism. There's no way that would be in good faith. So it's all about this, an apology to the trinity of Epler. This is meant to be Corinne Bush, the director, and Trick Weeks. So it's a big apology to basically say, no, there's no way that you Dragon Age veterans, or the game director in Corinne Bush's case, I don't think she'd worked on Dragon Age for that long, thankfully. But no, I'm so sorry for daring to criticize you guys, given you worked on the game in senior roles. Wasn't your fault, because Jason Schreier told me so. He says, no, definitely, it was not your guys' fault. It was not BioWare's fault for the Veilguard being a total mess. No, it was someone else. And so this article mentions that many fans agree and echo similar sentiments. And what the article means by that is a few people in the comments kind of agreed. So there was a handful of comments agreeing, and then quite a few people, even here on the Dragon Age subreddit, who actually said, hang on a minute, maybe that's not excuse BioWare of all these things, because there's a lot wrong with the game. It's not a handful of things. It's not like they tried to make something good, but it was the remnants of a live service, so they couldn't quite get it right. It was everything. It was the tone of the game. The characters just feel weird. The combat is crap. They sort of... I remember they were doing a lot of work, BioWare, to try and... with the marketing. No, it's really deep. Don't use your eyes, don't use your ears. We're saying it's deep, and here's like 10 seconds of footage where the combat's a bit more challenging on Twitter. I remember something like that. So they were trying to use like a 10-second recorded video on Twitter to change the narrative of their big, expensive marketing trailers that really just showed, no, the combat's not deep at all. It's been dumbed down. There's not a lot to like here if you're a Dragon Age fan. And it also doesn't help that even this post apologizing to these people, it has a bunch of edits at the end where it's like, oh, I should actually also mention that, yes, Veilguard is a dumbed down game. Edit 2, yes, no, some of these people are actually responsible for some of the things wrong with the game. So there's a whole bunch of caveats which basically still acknowledge that BioWare got everything totally wrong. They wrecked this series, they wrecked the game, but there's an apology anyway because of Jason Schreier's incredible reporting. And the article from the original person saying all the fans are apologizing. It's a big movement that we're all wrong about BioWare. It brings up a few quotes like, I have been very critical of the Veilguard and its tone, writing, and lack of continuity ever since it released. I tended to put the blame on the Trinity. John Epler, the creative director, Corinne Bush, and Trick Weeks. So again, all these leads. They always talk about all these people, they're always saying, no, it's not those Karens who are responsible, the pink hairs and so on. Stop holding them to account. Look at the leadership. They're the ones that you should be blaming. And it's like, okay, I'll blame Corinne Bush. She was the game director, so surely the buck stops with them. And then they go, no, that person's trans. You can't blame them. It's got to be someone else. It's got to be a shadowy figure where we don't know their name, and it's like an EA suit who probably wasn't even involved at all. Blame them, though. Do not blame any of these people, because we like them. We like Trick Weeks, because they say the right thing on Blue Sky or wherever they are now. And it continues, I assume that nobody cares about my thoughts, yet I want to acknowledge that me constantly blaming the Golden Trinity pushed the idea that they were either the sole reason or one of the major reasons for the game's failure and the death of the franchise. Well, I wasn't doing that. I blamed basically everyone at BioWare because the culture is rotten. I just know for a fact that no one competent who was there for the right reasons was getting into BioWare as a new team member. Like, they were at the point where the job interview, HR, all the people making the decision on hiring, they're not asking about, are you good at making video games? It's other questions. It's subtle political questions. Are you going to be a right fit with the team? Which means you basically have to be mental to get in. Those are the sorts of qualifications that they were looking for. So I'm happy to say that every member of the BioWare team was incompetent, very unlikely that they should be there, and if they're not there, they now have a nice red flag on their resume for other developers. So hopefully they don't get rehired where they can ruin things elsewhere at some of the better studios that are hopefully doing good work at some point to get some better games. Please don't infect them, ex-BioWare employees. I think most of them have been laid off now. I think it's a very small team. So the short of it is, I don't think most people are just blaming Corinne Bush or Trick Weeks. They blame the entire BioWare team because the whole culture's rotten, and you can just see it from the shift in something like Dragon Age Origins from 15 years ago, where it tried to be somewhat cool sword and sorcery fantasy that we kind of know from old school Dungeons and Dragons before they had wheelchair ramps in the evil sorcerer's castle. They tried to make it like, I guess, Baldur's Gate, so older games of that style, to what we get with the Veilguard. Totally different tone, feels politically motivated, feels like they want to do it that way, because they hate their fans. They hate the average RPG gamer, so they think, we want to do something different. It turns out that most average normal people wanted the Dragon Age Origins kind of style, just something cool and interesting. They don't want this. So, failed on all fronts. It's because of the culture. And that is from the top down, so it is the Corinne Bushes, the Trick Weeks, but it is everyone. And it continues, but now I can safely assume that they tried their best with a bad deck of cards. Many others agreed. Blaming Bush for any of this makes no sense. She came in to salvage an already sinking ship. Anyone that was blaming her at any point was totally uninformed. But the sinking ship, it was BioWare's ship. They built it. It was theirs. And then they hire someone to try and salvage a mess, and, I mean, that's not good either. It's not like anything that they actually shipped was of any sort of quality. So the whole thing was a mess. It sounds like BioWare were making something that was just literally a nothing. You can't even release this. They bring in Corinne, and they release something pretty awful. No one likes this. It's got nothing that old school fans, any new potential fans, could possibly like. It's totally mediocre. And that's the win. I've seen this written in a few places. It might have been Jason Schreier's article, but it was like, you're lucky you got anything at all. Like, BioWare, it could have been such a mess that we got nothing, but they managed to ship something. So that's worth celebrating. That's the argument that they're kind of going with. We're lucky to get anything. As I covered in a previous report on the matter, those close to the project had already credited Bush for getting development back on track. Where was it before then? Because, again, what we got was nothing anyone could have possibly wanted. So how is this back on track? And she joined the project back in 2022. The game came out end of last year, October 2024 or something. So she had a bit of time on it. It wasn't like she was there at the finish line just to get this out the door. I mean, the game went through so many recycles, live service, then it was something else. So she actually did have a bit of time on it. I don't buy that there's nothing she could have done to possibly improve the game. She couldn't possibly have taken just bad content out of the game that didn't need to be there. Like, anyone who green lights like that push-up scene and different things, like, you're just setting up everyone to genuinely fail. Like, I think someone used that example in here of setting people up to fail. I mean, just leaving that in there is costing jobs, getting your game ridiculed, guaranteeing that no one wants to be seen playing it. It's just irresponsible to leave something like that in there and making your game just a mockery of the internet. Like, what is it you were actually salvaging here? I'm not sure. Like, what was broken and not working before that this person fixed? I'm not sure what it could possibly be. Was it just getting people to actually do their jobs because everyone was so demotivated because they could just see an incoming flop? The second we ship this, I'm probably getting fired. Was it motivating those people? That's really all I can think of. Bush was blamed and made the subject of abuse over the game's shortcomings. Again, the game director. This person was the game director, and we've always been told, hold the leadership accountable. When you do that, no, that's bad. Don't do that. We don't mean them. Again, a trans person, underrepresented, no. They've got an asterisk where you can't. Leave them out of it, apparently, even though they're literally the director of the game. It seems that many are realizing this now, as one of the most upvoted posts in the Dragon Age subreddit is titled, "Corinne Bush saved Veilguard from a far worse fate, and we owe her an apology." I'm sure that post wasn't politically motivated, and that was the reason for most of the upvotes. If it was John Smith saved Veilguard, like, yeah, that's boring. They wouldn't have bothered with that. That's lame. He doesn't sound too interesting, so nah, we don't care. Of course, it should not have got to the point where so many in the community jumped to conclusions, and there are zero excuses for those who are being bigoted. Not that I'm seeing any of them apologise. Okay, well, this is what I mean. You're saying that a lot of fans are apologising. It's a single Reddit post. It's a shill who is looking for basically any reason to apologise, because even it says here, BioWare, please, at the start of this post. So you've got someone who was looking for any excuse to come crawling back to BioWare, which is an ever-shrinking number. They don't have many fans left. But the bigots aren't apologising. And you think basically anyone is a bigot who criticise the game in any sort of fashion. Like if you criticise the tone, the weird companions, probably even the combat, basically anything to do with the game just makes you a bigot. We're not apologising. That tells me you're not getting many apologies. That tells me, actually, most people who pointed the finger at BioWare, they continue to hold that view. BioWare is responsible, BioWare are useless, and these desperate attempts from the Jason Schreiers and these people, the mainstream games media, you're just painting a bigger target on BioWare's back. You're just reminding people, oh, they're going to fuck up Mass Effect 5. Don't give that any attention when it releases. I've heard about a Mass Effect TV show. That's just going to get clowned on when you hear all this, even if other people make it. Like, no one's going to give them the benefit of the doubt. The only thing, in good faith, the only thing that is going to help is just to shut up, don't talk about this. Maybe advertise that you've gotten rid of people at BioWare and there's new blood. It's BioWare in name, but we've got new people in there. We promise we've gotten rid of all the weirdos. Trust us. We swear. That's the only good news anyone wants to hear. Anything to do with, oh no, BioWare were innocent, it was EA, that ship sailed like 10 years ago, long after Anthem. So this is just sad, but it's amusing. So thank you very much. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.